Drive to Survive is back for a third season this year, and it's once again been proved to be massively popular with Formula 1 fans. It's perfectly timed to get everyone excited for the F1 season, but I wanted to take a look at how Drive to Survive is able to tell the story of Formula 1 in a way that the live feed simply can't. Let's have a look. My name's Andy, and this is Behind the Drive. In this video I'm going to take a look at 3 key points that in my opinion demonstrates how Drive to Survive can tell the story of Formula 1 in a way that live footage simply doesn't. I'll look at how the series focuses on people rather than the timing of the championship. I'll then have a look at the on-screen graphics and the live feed and how this demonstrates the complexity of storytelling in live Formula 1 races. And then finally I'll look at the way that box-to-box media create tension in each episode to create a story that builds into a crescendo and keeps us all hooked. Now I must caveat that I'm actually recording this video before I've been able to watch all of Series 3, so all of this is based on my experience from Series 1 and 2 with a couple of teaser clips that have been dropped over the last couple of weeks. But the same storytelling principles do still apply. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe to Behind the Drive for more F1 content just like this for the 2021 season and beyond. Focus on the people. So my first point in this video is one of the first key principles of storytelling, and that is about connecting with the audience. Box-to-box films, the producers of Drive to Survive, do this to great effect by focusing on the people within the sport. In Formula 1, as a casual viewer, it's difficult to get to know the drivers' personalities, especially if you just tuned in on a Sunday at 2 PM and watched the race. By avoiding the build-up or post-race content, you won't get to know the drivers themselves. This means that somebody who's new to the sport may be put off by the fact that they can't see the driver's emotion through the race. And the only way to capture that live is through the radio communications between the drivers and their teams. So it makes it quite challenging to make a personal connection to the drivers. This is a real challenge that's quite specific to motorsport and Formula 1. In all other sports that I can think of, you can see the people involved and their emotions are obvious to see. And it helps a new fan of a given sport to build a connection with a player. Drive to Survive offers an opportunity to look behind the curtain, mixing interviews with the drivers, team personnel and pundits with footage from races alongside the commentary clips. And by overlaying these elements together, they can build a narrative that hooks you as a viewer because you want to know what happens during each episode. Now for somebody who's never seen Formula 1 before, this is perfect as they're more likely to follow a story where they build up the knowledge of a particular character. But what the series does that makes it so successful is that it offers additional nuggets of insight from the interviews that nobody's seen before. And so even somebody who knows exactly what's happened and has seen it all take place live, they want to hear about the extra nuances that the show can give them. One of the other points that allows a viewer to connect with the people is the fact that each episode is standalone. And whilst the series does follow some vague timeline that could roughly map to a real life season, the producers focus on the narrative of the people themselves, be that a team or a driver. So you could find yourself watching elements that track from the first race to the last race of the season in order to share that story effectively. Now this is actually quite a wide criticism of the Drive to Survive series, but for me it's a critical element of the show to allow the audience to connect with Formula 1 in an entirely new way. Football teams frequently have these so-called fly-on-the-wall documentaries which document a team's season, and these follow the narrative of the season in time. This is obviously critical as the audience are already seeing a perspective of the season just from the players within that team. However, with Formula 1, the series focuses on many different aspects from within the sport, which makes time jumping critical to allow a viewer to build the connection and then enjoy the crescendo, which is a point that I'll touch on later. On-screen graphics. My next point focuses on making it as easy as possible for a viewer to understand the story. And Formula 1's dependency on on-screen graphics that are used in race broadcasts are a clear demonstration of how complex the sport can be. Let's have a look at some of these graphics and offer a comparison to some other popular sports. For starters, you have the basic graphics that sit on screen throughout the race. There's a timing tower on the left which covers all 20 drivers and the order that they're in. It includes information on which lap the lead drivers are on, and also the gap between each driver in the race. So you can already see that for a casual viewer who may not have seen Formula 1 racing before, is being presented with an overload of information. Not only this, but to add to the first point in the video, it's difficult to associate the 3-letter abbreviations on the timing tower with a driver or personality that people will resonate to. For example, when you see those 3 letters of VER, it's difficult to associate that to Max Verstappen. which builds on the point that I mentioned earlier in the video. The next point on the timing tower is the differences in timings between the drivers. It's fairly logical, but let's take a look at an example. This first one shows the interval, which shows the gap between each of the drivers, and this can often be a bit confusing at an initial glance as the timings between each of the drivers is often quite variable. And then there are also occasions like this, which show the total gap to the leader, which again shows just a time that's increasing as you go down the tower, and then towards the bottom it may show just +1 lap once the drivers have been lapped during a race. So if you haven't seen a race before, it's another point that you'd need to learn in order to build a story of the Grand Prix when watching it live. So that covers the standard graphics for Formula 1, but then you have all the enhancements to help tell the story during an F1 race. You can have tyre graphics, which tells you which type of tyre a car has on at any given time, which again means nothing to a casual watcher that may not understand which tyre is the optimum and what the differentials may mean for the drivers at any given stage in the race. It also doesn't tell you the story of strategy, as it isn't clear which drivers have made their pit stops, for example. And as we know, there are a whole host of other graphics that AWS offer on screen that offer some, well, let's say limited information on top of all this. But that's a topic for another video. The point I'm trying to get at here is that a Formula 1 race is a complex story and message to get across to a new viewer in real time, which is a fundamental issue in bringing new fans to the sport, and one that Drive to Survive offers a solution for. To offer a comparison, we can look at football. The standard on-screen graphics show the time and the score. It couldn't be more simple to see what's going on as soon as you tune in at any stage during the match. And yes, in a similar way to the AWS graphics, there are some additional statistics that are often overlaid during a football game, but these really aren't crucial to the story. Now, Drive to Survive does away with these altogether, and as I mentioned earlier, it instead focuses on the individual stories from within a race or within the season. For example, as one of the teaser clips that was shared as a trailer of Lando Norris's podium in Austria, they focus on the clips of only his car on track, as well as showing the emotions of the mechanics in the garage and the strategists on the pit wall. And the audio through this section is focused on the team radio with brief interludes of commentary. So whereas a live Formula 1 race needs on-screen graphics to help viewers in their understanding of the race and could create confusion, Drive to Survive looks at the individuals and tells the story of an event, be that an underdog story, a fallen giant, or a championship fight. Building tension. The third principle of storytelling that I want to highlight with Drive to Survive is about building tension. This is a principle that so many YouTube videos, TV shows and films utilise in order to allow an audience to feel invested in an outcome and want to stick around to know what happens. In Drive to Survive, the producers take you through a journey with a central character of an individual, but to build tension they often throw a bit of jeopardy in there for good measure. To build that knowledge they take a look at the story from multiple angles and perspective, where they cover off the story itself briefly and they focus on the emotions of the drivers, the teams and the pundits. And crucially, they often bring in a rival, an enemy that main character is competing against. Then you have the editing. They add in music and heighten the emotions at particular moments. Take a crash for example. They add in the additional sound effects and show it from multiple angles. Now this is another criticism of the series, but it's crucial to build that tension as they create into a crescendo or a climax. And it must be said that even if you know what's coming, it's the emotionals of the individuals involved that builds the tension for you and keeps you hooked. It's also worth mentioning here that the producers do take some artistic license here. The commentary in the team radio, for example, is not always taken from the track footage that's covered. And then the order of some items could be changed to construct a narrative to tell the story in a different way to help build to that climax. So this is the three ways in which the team at Box to Box Films utilise storytelling in Drive to Survive to keep us all hooked. There are a huge number of other aspects that they utilise in order to create a story that keeps us interested and excited for the series each year. And in addition to focusing on the people, being able to tell the story without on-screen graphics and building tension through the episode, there is of course the timing of the whole thing. They drop the series just before the next season, which is when the anticipation for Formula 1 is at its highest. So that's 3 techniques used to master the art of storytelling in Drive to Survive, and how this differs from the live broadcasts of Formula 1 races. Is there anything else that they've utilised? And did you enjoy Season 3? Let me know in the comments, and hit that like button and subscribe button for more Formula 1 videos just like this one in the future.